do this. Yeah. We are the certain and the seeking, the lifers and the newcomers, the beloved and the brokenhearted, the insiders and the rejected, all of whom have found a home in the extraordinary yet intimate community of Unitarian Universalism. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst. I'm Angela Warren, the Director of Faith Development for this congregation. My pronouns are she and her. We're so glad you've chosen to be here, virtually and in person. Our minister, Reverend Michelle Buheit, is on sabbatical leave through August, and services during this time will include guest speakers from as far away as Portugal and as close to home as Amherst. For those in the chapel, I invite you to put your phones on reverence mode, silencing them so that you and all may be fully present and free from distraction.
As we gather, we acknowledge that our church is built on land that was once nurtured and cherished by the First Nations people of this region, the Haudenosaunee, and the people known as the Neutrals before them. May we continue to tend this cherished land and courageously cultivate community with all living things. It has been said that Unitarian Universalism is a religion that puts its faith in you, trusting each individual to engage in the spiritual journey and to reach our own conclusions about spiritual matters. We do that in beloved community as we support one another in faith and friendship.
We begin each gathering by lighting the chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Our flaming chalice represents the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of our commitment to foster more compassion and justice to a hurting world. Please join us with this familiar chalice lighting. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
We, the Buffalo community, suffered a horrific grief of multiple lives lost in the name of racial hatred yesterday. May we keep in our hearts the families who have been so grievously changed. May we recommit ourselves to coming together and to do the work of love. Each of us carries with us into this worship time, cares and concerns, joys and sorrows. Together we create the container where we can put our burdens, knowing that they are held gently by this gathered community. For those joining virtually, I invite you to give voice to that which is on your heart, or perhaps type it into the chat in the live stream. For those here in the chapel, I invite you to come forward and place a stone or shell on the table labyrinth in recognition of that which is on your heart. Please join me in a communal response. In this gathered community, we hold one another in love.
Together we light a candle of sorrow and concern for the people of Ukraine and Russia, for the people in our own community, and indeed all of the people and the more than human family of life on earth. We include in the circle of compassion and care all those who are impacted by acts of needless aggression and terror. And we pray for peace and compassion. In this gathered community, we hold the world in love. Please rise in body or spirit as we raise our voices together and sing Gather the Spirit by Jim Scott, number 347 in the Gray Hymnal.
Reverend Barry Abraham Zavah is an ordained priest of the Order of Melchizedek and a longtime friend and former member of the UU Amherst. Barry joined in 1982, served on the board, headed the UUSC Social Concerns, the annual Canvas Welcoming Committee, attended Eagles, the former St. Lawrence District's leadership school, provided lay worship services, sermons during summers, and more. Crediting UU Amherst and UUism for so many positives in his life, regretting only having to resign UU Amherst for the Unitarian Universalist Association counting purposes when he moved to Alpine, Texas in 2008 and joining a local UU fellowship there. Barry looks forward to returning to Buffalo, Western New York in his 105,000 plus traveled RV, seeing all but New England and Eastern Canada, and attending UU Amherst, in part to be assured his blue name tag is still there at the bottom right-hand corner of the name tag board.
The opening words are attributed to Kaladisa. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
Our time for all ages today is called Noah by Reverend Christopher Buse. Noah was an old man who loved to dance and sing and to make things with his hands. He especially loved to make mud pies. Noah loved to do these things because he felt closest to the Creator when he was being creative himself. All the people in Noah's village thought he was a fool. "Why do you waste your time dancing and singing and making mud pies?" they asked. And Noah responded, "Because it gives me joy." One day, the people saw Noah doing something even stranger than usual. He was building an ark. "Noah, why do you waste your time building an ark when there is no water for miles around?" And Noah responded, "Because it gives me joy." On another day, the people saw Noah collecting 2 of every kind of animal and putting them into his ark. They thought Noah really had just lost his marbles at this time. "Noah, why do you waste your time collecting 2 of every kind of animal?" And once again, Noah said, "Because it gives me joy." Finally, one day it started to rain, and we're going to pretend that we're making a rainstorm. You know how to do that thing. We need a little bit more rain, everybody. Noah gathered his family together, and they all got on board the ark. It rained so hard and for so long, the whole earth was covered with water. As Noah looked out the window of the ark, one of his children came and stood beside him. "Dad, did you know the flood was coming?" the little girl asked her father. Noah was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Not exactly, but I have this theory about life. Life can get pretty tough. Sometimes it can be hard to make it through the day. But if you can do something creative, then you will know joy. Rain can fall down and flood waters rise, but the things that give you joy will make sure you are prepared and help keep you afloat."
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, where we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand for her people. Oh, come, build the land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
The reading is from The Prophet by Gihil Gibran. It's entitled Self-Knowledge. And a man said, "Speak to us of self-knowledge." And he answered, saying, "Your hearts know in silence the secrets of the days and the nights. But your ears thirst for the sound of your heart's knowledge. You would know in words that which you have always known in thought. You would touch with your fingers the naked body of your dreams, and it is well you should. The hidden wellspring of your soul must needs rise and run murmuring to the sea, and the treasure of your infinite depths would be revealed to your eyes. But let there be no scales to weigh your unknown treasure, and seek not the depths of your knowledge with staff or sounding line. For self is a sea boundless and measureless. Say not, I have found the truth, but rather, I have found a truth. Say not, I have found the path of the soul. Say rather, I have met the soul walking upon my path. For the soul walks upon all paths. The soul walks not upon a line, neither does it grow like a reed. The soul unfolds itself like a lotus of countless petals.
Our shared reading is number 557 in the gray hymnal. I believe the words will be on the screen. All living substance, all substance of energy, being, and purpose are united and share the same destiny. And many. All people, those we love, and those we know not of, are united and share the same destiny. Birth to death, we share this unity with the sun, earth, our brothers and sisters, strangers, flowers of the field, snowflakes, volcanoes, and moonbeams. Birth, life, death, unknown, known, unknown. Our destiny from unknown to unknown. May we have the faith to accept this mystery and build upon its everlasting truth.
Brief introduction. I'd like to thank my Alpine area computer high-tech guru, Tim Wild. He's facilitating this recording. Les Buhite for communicating with Tim and indicating what needs be. I'm recording here at our lovely award-winning Alpine Public Library. And I'd certainly invite everyone to come on down and visit us in remote Far West Texas. Brief introduction to the sermon. It deals with a number of things that unfolded in my life during more difficult times. I'll be referring to God, but please know I'm not a deist. I'm not suggesting there's any particular form of God or spirituality that one needs to subscribe to. Everyone's path is their own, but we're on the path together. Once upon a time, in what seems like a galaxy far, far away, and in my somewhat less judgmental days, I was an Erie County Assistant District Attorney. The following transpired when a pastor of a large, non-denominational suburban church appeared in county court to facilitate the modification of bail for a defendant who had contacted him from the holding center. The defendant said he was willing to work with the church, and the pastor said the church was willing to work with him. The defendant presented as a typical, beefy, burly, grimy, bearded, long-haired biker type. His lengthy criminal history reflecting, among other things, felony convictions for narcotics trafficking in Florida and weapons possession. Well, Judge McCarthy was willing to modify the bail if the defendant had a suitable living situation. And in all my self-righteousness, I walked over to the pastor, tugged on his coat sleeve, and said, well, if you've got so much faith in this fellow, why don't you take him into your own home? He reached into his pocket for a quarter and said, Judge, if I could have a few minutes to contact my wife. I said, don't do that. He'll slaughter all of you in your sleep. Well, he returned in a few minutes, and over my strenuous objections, the court modified the bail, requiring the defendant to live with the pastor's family and be attentive to his promises to the court and the pastor. Surely you jest, I thought. Several months later, I saw the pastor in the courthouse and asked about the defendant. Oh, he's fine. He's attending church and doing everything required of him. Several years later, I attended a wedding in the same church. And of course, I asked the pastor how the fellow was doing and why he'd even taken a chance on him. He responded that the man and his family are pillars of the church and that he was never a problem. He went on to say, Barry, if you've been a minister for any length of time, you get calls from the holding center all the time. They'll promise anything if you'll facilitate a reduction of bail. You don't go to bat for all of them, but with a little experience, you know who is sincere. This man had a profound transformation on his jail cell floor. And that registered with me as, oh. So we'll put that Post-it note here in terms of what forms things to come. Well, then once upon a time, I honored a New Year's resolution, rising at 5 a.m. to exercise. I watched one of the few TV shows on pre-cable TV at the time, the PTL Club, a scam if there ever was. Between trolling his viewers for money, Reverend Jim and Tammy Faye Baker would solicit testimony from persons in the audience who said they were born again, finding peace and comfort upon accepting Jesus Christ into their lives as their personal Lord and Savior. Now, that impressed me. Sure, why not? I'd come to wonder years before, could everybody's personal ESP or religious experience be pure fiction or delusion? I was, I hope, and still open to the possibility of some things being true, although I'd not personally experienced them or learned about them in school, or they'd appeared on the cover of Time magazine or in the media. But you know, those things happen to other people, not me. Flash forward to a difficult time in my life beginning in February of 1985. My wife, Mary, was experiencing horrendous difficulty through a combination of medical and psychiatric problems. My life had gone into the bucket dealing with this as well as our growing debt. Clearly, it was no picnic for her either. In the second week of August 1986, Mary was hospitalized in order to stabilize the failing interactions among her various medications. Well, I returned home from the hospital just before midnight of Friday, going into Saturday morning. Dropping into my recliner, exhausted, angry, and frustrated from dealing with a resident bound to ignore her psychiatrist's specific prescription concerning her care. All of this was beyond any life training I ever had. Well-meaning friends had been telling me to give it up to God. Well, terrific, except I wasn't a believer, perhaps an agnostic on the continuum. 2 weeks after my bar mitzvah, I bolted and never came back. Besides, God didn't factor into my life, and why would God want to take my self-created problems off my shoulders onto his? I sat in that recliner, consumed by 18 months of every step forward, resulting in 2 steps back. Completely defeated, I waved a little white flag of surrender in my mind. I saw that white flag in my mind, saying to myself, that's it. God, if you want it, it's yours. I was sincere. I meant it. 10 hours later into Saturday morning at my weekly group counseling session, I began to speak about something quite tragic that I'd learned of earlier in the week. In seconds, I was off the chair and on the floor unloading all the pain, 19 months worth, perhaps years in a pure baby's effortless cry. I was having what's called a primal scream, which this time I'd had one several years before, earlier in my counseling days, but this resulted in a very profound spiritual experience. It took me from agnostic to believer. I can't go into all the details now, but if anyone has about 45 minutes for the long version, I'll tell you, but you pick up the tab on the coffee, okay? In the days that followed, I asked God questions in meditation about what was going on between Mary and me. Insight was presented clairvoyantly, that is French for clear vision, before the screen of my inner vision. I was highly intuitive and feeling great. I believed that all of my inner problems were solved. No, of course, the outer world problems didn't go away, but I was feeling great. In the middle of the 8th week, this window seemed to close, and I was beside myself. I was despondent. Oh my goodness, I was beginning to feel like I did 8 weeks ago. It led me to try to find out what the heck had happened. I had no context in my life in Judaism in the days before my bar mitzvah of what was going on. My desire was to return to that mountain. In late December of 1986, I met a teacher, Gloria Shveda. She seemed to have certain spiritual knowledge beyond my experience. I asked her about what it was that happened to me. Subsequently, in March 1987, I began her class, The Untold Story. She talked about topics which I was unfamiliar. I'd been reading for some years, curious about the existence of the lost continent of Atlantis, material by Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, Edgar Cayce on ESP, Edgar Cayce on Jesus and His Church, Edgar Cayce, Past Lives, things like that. But I didn't necessarily have a firm, rooted, grounded belief in these things. In the 3rd week of her class, she discussed initiation, something that occurred in agreement with our higher self, spiritual teachers, guides, and God. Gloria made an analogy to a seismograph. Our life is going on with the needle doing its thing, and then suddenly we're taken to the mountain and provided lessons often too intense for the conscious mind to fully retain or have immediate access to. And then after a period of perhaps weeks or months, that seismograph returns to a new baseline in our life. The needle returns to a new baseline where we're to then incorporate the lessons we learned while on the mountain. It seems I was the fellow on the jailhouse cell floor. I was the person in the PTL club. We'd each experienced an initiation. If it could happen to me or the defendant, it could happen to each and every one of us, believers in God or not. And that doesn't mean that I could lay out a recipe for how to. Well, if you did this and if you did that and you read this, said that, it's a little bit more complicated than that, and I can't say as even if there was a recipe, it could happen. It's a very individual thing. I hadn't accepted Jesus Christ into my life as my personal Lord or Savior. I still haven't, although I say we do have a decent relationship going. Now, subsequently, an opportunity opened in July of 1989 in nearby Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, subsequent to meeting Arliss. Arliss was one of the 2 best psychic healers in the Philippines. He was in Hamilton doing some healing work and doing some astounding work. Then one night, with the several of us in attendance, there were about 12 or so of us, he facilitated what is called a baptism of fire, that is, a bringing in the gifts of the Holy Spirit, likened to the day of Pentecost in the New Testament. And this was another initiation, again, too long to fully tie the threads together, but, with another cup of coffee another day, we can talk about it. So what were my 2 experiences all about? Assuming I'd not had one or more major psychotic breaks, Rather, joining the ranks, I would suggest, of the experience of other human beings across the path of human history. Let's discuss the matter now of born again. There is some similarity to the born again experience. That term is used primarily in the evangelical, fundamentalist, and Pentecostal branches of Protestant Christianity, where it is associated with salvation, conversion, and spiritual birth. Outside of these circles, the term is often applied by extension to other phenomena, including a transcending personal experience or the experience of being personally reborn, spiritually reborn, as opposed to spiritual birth. Some translators of the Gospels consider born from above to be a better translation than born again. It must be said the term born again is used somewhat differently across various Christian traditions. Christian theology is different and broader than what we have seen in the West and here in America from Christian fundamentalism. Reverend Alice Blair Wesley's pamphlet, Our Unitarian Universalist Faith, frequently asked questions, answers, how do UUs understand salvation? She writes, UUs are as concerned with salvation in the sense of spiritual health or wholeness as any other religious people. Among Unitarian Universalists, instead of salvation, you will hear of personal growth, increased wisdom, strength of character, and gifts of insight, understanding, inner and outer peace, and compassion. The ways in which these things come to change and heal us are many indeed. The concept of born again is also different in New Thought churches such as Unity, Science of Mind, Religious Science, which suggests that being born again is a continuous process that must be done repeatedly as one dies to the old, dies to ineffective ideas, and redirects oneself towards Christ consciousness. And we'll discuss what that is in a few moments. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within. It's available here and now, attained by turning to love. This contrasts with the fundamentalist belief that heaven is to be only attained via an apocalyptic end-time scenario for those who are born again in the way they define born again. Another esoteric precept is found in the Course in Miracles, which teaches that the physical world is but an illusion, humanity having accepted the false belief of our separation from God due to having been removed from the garden thanks to Adam and Eve. Rather, the Course teaches, we've never been, nor are we ever separated from the divine. I accept this more esoteric view. Now, about the term Christ consciousness and initiation and how that ties in. There are several books that influenced me along the way. One is Alice Bailey, From Bethlehem to Calvary, and another is Elizabeth Heitch, Initiation. Basically, they discuss that each of us evolve from the lowest forms of consciousness, that is, mineral consciousness, through animal consciousness, through human consciousness, as we evolve and ultimately attain here in the human sense, the Christ consciousness. And it occurs as indicated in Reverend Wesley's pamphlet in an experiential form. Once awareness goes to the head as a possibility, as an intellectual possibility, yeah, it could happen, maybe you're open to the possibility of something, and it roots solidly in the gut as an undeniable reality by a direct experiential event, such as we learn balance on a bicycle. That's a very common analogy of getting it. You don't need to learn balance again. You got it. When we get through initiation and experience that we are all connected, that we are all one, we have attained the level of the Christ consciousness. That's really all it means. It means we get, we understand. We don't have to be convinced anymore that we're all connected. In other words, Christ consciousness, the derivation from Latin consciousness, con, with, Latin for with, and scienter, knowledge, with awareness, that we're all connected. We have attained the level of the Christ consciousness. Unitarian Universalists covenant to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, not a reckless one. Now, the last initiation that Jesus took was to overcome the fear of death. That's a concept described very much in Elizabeth Heich's book, Initiation, Overcoming the Fear of Death. And I suppose to be nailed on the cross for several days is one heck of an initiation. But he passed. Jesus passed that initiation. He came to understand and realize there is no death. Life goes on in higher vibrational planes. And he certainly came to understand that we're all connected. Unitarian Universalists covenant to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, not a reckless one. There are physical laws of this universe. I don't advocate undertaking risky behavior just to advance one's spiritual growth. Having faith is one thing. Climbing a building connected only by our fingers in the crevices, or walking a wire above the churning windswept waters of Niagara Falls, that's quite another. Not every initiation calls for us to confront the fear of death. Nor is it true the only way to attain the level of Christ consciousness is by pushing the envelope of life and death. Yes, Jesus had a powerful aha experience, but it didn't just fall upon him like opening a cupboard door and having a large can of pizzas land on our head. He studied for years, if not lifetimes, to acquire the knowledge to grow in consciousness and attain the skills necessary to pass his final earthly initiation. There's a body of knowledge that suggests, in his missing years from age 13 until he returned on the pages of the Gospels, he was in the East studying with the Buddhists and the Hindus and learning their techniques of mind-body control. And there are any number of books written documenting similarities in certain Hindu and Buddhist theology with Christian theology. Now, do we really get it? Do we really get it that we're part of the interdependent web of existence, or that there really is one? How do we know there is? Are we as certain as we know that the sun is coming up in the morning and going to bed at night and will be up the next day? Do we know a starving child dying somewhere in a refugee camp in Darfur or displaced millions in the Ukraine truly affect us? Maybe not as much as the nexus to political or corporate corruption and its financial costs for delivering essential goods and services to sustain our Western lifestyle. In both ways, and more, we are connected. The living tradition which we share speaks to direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. And I'm going to repeat that The living tradition which we share speaks to direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. That is one of the aspects of Unitarian Universalism that I truly appreciate. Its inclusive, planetary-wide Universalist elements of indigenous traditions to our Western traditions to those of the East. Words related to initiation include a start, beginning, commencement, or opening. We have initiations all the time. Simply living and pointing our feet in any direction will provide numerous opportunities to be at the right place at the right time, leading to a sense of spiritual health and wholeness and personal growth, as stated in Reverend Wesley's UU pamphlet. As individuals, do we always act upon the opportunities for growth presented to us? That's where free will comes into play. The universe is very patient. It continues to present opportunities to us. I've called it a great, big, generous prosperity-giving machine. Oh, it doesn't mean it gives us what we say or think we want, but it gives us what we need. Again, leading to a sense of spiritual health and wholeness and personal growth. Unitarian Universalism constantly challenges us to put our core values into action. The paths are many. Blessed that on our journey we're not alone. We are here to support each other. Wherever one may be on the path, and this was from my introduction to UUism class, we're all on the path. None of us further ahead, further behind, better or worse than anyone else. We're all on the path, and when you need a hand, we're here to help each other. Blessings, too, for Zoom and YouTube worship to hear Reverend Michelle's sermons, where she's providing means to manifest our principles and purposes in daily life. And we do have wonderful principles and purposes, and we share a living tradition that's quite universal. But how do we get these? How do we manifest these? How do we get the rubber on the road? How do we get the pedal to the metal to the pedal? And her sermons have been providing ways and means to do exactly that, and I thank Reverend Michelle for doing that. We freely choose to bring ourselves here at this moment in time, into this world, into the community of this covenant church, seeking to create, if not an immediate heaven on earth, certainly a more just world for people and our blue-green home of earth. What is our path? It is to manifest justice, undeniably be aware we're all connected in the physical and quantum levels in order to be effective in our service to the greater whole. Some may be teachers, some may be researchers, some may work well with animals, some might be the people that have a hint of technology that I'm otherwise left in the cold. But we're each doing our service in our own unique ways. The Hopi prophecy, which Reverend Michelle shares to close our Saturday morning Zoom caring circle, says, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." Peace, love, and blessings to you. And thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Please rise in body or in spirit as we sing together hymn number 86 in the gray hymnal, Blessed Spirit of My Life.
Every strength
The closing words are taken from Robert Mabry Doss. For all who see God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. For all who seek a right path, may a way be found, and the courage to take it step by step.
Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you've been inspired and uplifted by sharing this time together. You can support the work and the mission of this congregation with your financial contributions. For those in our chapel today, you'll find baskets at the back to receive your gift. For those participating virtually, I invite you to take a moment to visit our website, uuamherst.org, and click on the giving link, or you can text your gift to 833-987-1968. Please join us as we extinguish our chalice with these familiar words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now we'll sing Travel Light together. We do not have much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel this way with us. So, be swift to love and make haste to be kind. Go in peace. Join us for coffee in the Emerson Room today, or outside on our patio since it's so beautiful.